Dr. Sleep, dare to go back. Where do I begin? See this guy right here? Mike Flanagan. Oculus, Hush, Gerald's Game, The Haunting of Hill House. He is the writer, editor, and director of Dr. Sleep. And quite frankly, the man deserves a standing ovation. It's hard to tell a good story on the big screen, but Mike Flanagan had so much more to do than that. He had to make a film that wouldn't tarnish the legacy of the Stanley Kubrick vision. I'm talking the Grady twins, the hedge maze, Room 237 and his style of the lady in the bathtub, the buckets of blood flowing from the elevator, the unforgettable moments and movements of the tricycle scenes. The list is endless. He also had to keep the author of The Shining and Dr. Sleep, Stephen King, happy with his adaptation. I'm sure we all know by now that Stephen King despises the Stanley Kubrick vision of The Shining, and for Mike Flanagan to take two completely different visions, mold them together to create one cohesive unit in order to tell a brand new story, I mean, that is unbelievable that he was able to accomplish that. It's a true testament to his writing abilities. And then he had to take those old worlds after mashing them together and then create an entirely new, modern world with different characters and different storylines and make everything, and I mean everything, work together. You got the Shining book, you have the Shining movie, you have the Shining miniseries, you have the Dr. Sleep book, and you have all the fans who want very specific things, and you have a studio that wants very specific things too, and you have to put all this together within 2.5 hours and put your own directorial stamp on it. And he did it. A director is there to bring a vision to life cinematically. Mike Flanagan had a hell of a lot more to do than just make a film. And if you didn't like the movie, that's fine. There's no problem with that. I totally understand why a lot of people won't like this movie. But let's please take a moment to step back and appreciate just how hard a film this is to make. And give Flanagan a little bit of credit. Hello everyone and welcome to Nocturnal Horrors. My name's Sean Mazerall, and just so you guys know, I did do a couple videos on The Shining before this one. I did a comparison between Room 237 and 217, Kubrick vs. King versions, and I also did a book review of Dr. Sleep. So once you finish this video, if you are still inclined, please feel free to watch those videos. I'd appreciate it. Okay, we're gonna do a bunch of spoiler-free stuff here, and then we'll get into comparisons and analysis a little bit later. I will definitely let you know when the spoilers will be here. Quick plot summary. Danny Torrance from the original Shining is now grown up. He's an alcoholic, he's a drifter, and he's just trying to get by with his life. He meets a girl who possesses the Shining as well. Unfortunately, there's a group known as the True Knot who will do anything and everything to get her powers. Obviously, like the book, this is a film that has two very different storylines, and somehow they need to be planted together cohesively. The Shining, for the most part, takes place in one location, that of the Overlook Hotel, within less than one full winter season. Dr. Sleep is the exact opposite, taking place over many decades and also in many locations across the United States. Being a book adaptation, there's a delicate tightrope walk where the screenwriter has to put enough backstory into the movie, however, not put too much into it so that the action and the plot can really continue with a fast pace. Too much backstory makes the movie boring. Too little backstory and you have boring, one-dimensional characters. Thus, it's a very, very fine line. This film is 2.5 hours long, plus 27 minutes of commercials and trailers beforehand. Yes, I tracked it. So that is 3 hours commitment as well as some driving time. This length doesn't make the film easy to sit through. I'm not saying this film is boring. I'm not saying this film is slow. I'm saying this film has weight, and every scene has weight, and there's a lot of information to get to, and yet it still does a great job of not boring you, especially if you are obsessed with The Shining, the book, and the movie like myself. Dr. Sleep is an intriguing, ambitious book with several old characters, several new characters, new timelines, new mythologies, and a completely new vision. Normally when you have so many characters like in an ensemble movie, you're able to bounce back and forth between each character, and it really quickens the pace for a film, which works really well. Unfortunately, Flanagan, the editor, still moves from character to character like a hot potato, but because each scene has so much weight to it, it doesn't feel like it makes the film go faster. I do think it's very important though for us to give Flanagan the benefit of the doubt, because I guarantee you that the first cut of this film was over 4 hours long. And I can just tell you Flanagan must have hated having to strip down his film, deleting scene after scene after scene to get the film to an actual watchable version in terms of time, and in order to make the studio happy so the theaters can run more and more and more screenings. I'm glad it runs long. We have a ton of Marvel movies that are really long. We have a ton of drama films that are really long. And a lot of times the studio films in terms of horror put out these 80 to 90 minute features that are very one-dimensional, character oriented, and just hope for a bunch of jump scares. So for me to have a horror movie from a studio like Warner Brothers to put out a long film for us horror nerds, I appreciate it. These times are not like the old days of horror. You remember when we had films like The Exorcist and you had that really long opening sequence with the priest traipsing around the Middle East and excavating whatever the heck he's looking for, and he has that extreme face-off with the demon, and it was really long for an opening sequence that really didn't gel with most of Act 2. But once it comes to Act 3, it all makes sense. I could easily see so many studios nowadays saying, just cut that whole opening and start right away with Reagan, her mother, in Washington, D.C. That would have made sense from a studio perspective, but they didn't do it. Or even 2001, A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick. You have that whole opening sequence, no dialogue, because we're just looking at monkey/cavemen people, and they're learning how to use a bone as a weapon. You don't have to have all that sequence, but they had it, and it worked to perfection. So for us to have a very, very long movie with an opening sequence like we have in Dr. Sleep, that is a beautiful thing. We get through a lot of the old time stuff, we get through a lot of The Shining, we see a lot of the stuff that we wanted to see, we see all this continuation of the book and the movie, and as horror fans of The Shining, we love it. But there's definitely a scene later on that could have easily been the start of the film. There is one very crucial scene that really gets the whole plot moving, gets the characters' arcs moving, their motivations moving, and a studio could have easily said, start there, that's where it's fun, and then the film is under 2 hours. It would not have been what we would have wanted, and again, I really appreciate that we had the backstory stuff first. The characters are great in this film. Ewan McGregor does an excellent job as an adult Danny Torrance, and Rebecca Ferguson plays Rose the Hat, the leader of the True Knot. If there's a person that didn't think Rebecca Ferguson was absolutely phenomenal in this movie, I would love to have a conversation because I found her exceptional. I am an extreme fan of The Shining, both the book and film. So when I heard that there was a sequel coming from the book, I was very hesitant. I didn't want the sequel. I didn't want the book sequel. I just wanted The Shining to live on as it was in book and movie. And sure, even the miniseries. So I was very worried when I started reading Dr. Sleep, and I actually took the book away and I couldn't read it after the first 300 pages because of a lot of the new characters and the new storylines. I just wasn't on board with it. I didn't want to know anything new. I didn't want to go into this world. Rebecca Ferguson, Rose the Hat, in the film completely changed me. I love that character and I love that storyline, and it's very rare that I can say I like a movie better than the book, but I do think I like the movie better than the book. It wasn't just her portrayal of Rose the Hat that blew me away, it was also Flanagan's decisions of what to leave in, what to leave out, and what to strengthen at certain moments in certain scenes that really makes Rose the Hat stand out. In a universe where the Overlook Hotel lives and its ghosts are still there, Rose the Hat stands tall and is unmatched. from her body language, her delivery of her words, her passion, her anger, her confidence, her overconfidence, her overall disposition. She demanded to be seen and heard. Weird comparison side note here, I feel like there's very few body actors. There's very few actors who can use their body to show emotion. You have Steve Martin and Jim Carrey. Usually body actors are very much more in terms of comedy, but then in the horror world you have things like Art the Clown and Terrifier. I mean, that is quintessential using your body to portray emotion. Rebecca Ferguson does this wonderfully. She moves with beauty and anger and happiness. She's kind of like the waves of an ocean. Sometimes it's like really, really calm, and then sometimes it's really, really violent, and you don't know which one you're necessarily going to get, but you know that each and every wave is beautiful. That is Ferguson's performance. She's going to be a very, very busy actress. The movie aesthetically is absolutely gorgeous. If you're a fan of camera work and cinematography and even CGI, you're going to be a happy camper here. Kubrick's movie was so crucial to filmmaking as a whole. You had Garrett Brown on board, who was the creator of the Steadicam. Steadicams are so normal now. They're not just living in a movie industry world, they are living in everyone's cell phone. For those of you who don't know, Garrett Brown invented the Steadicam, which is this apparatus that the camera can sit in while it's being moved around by the camera operator, and it negates all the herky-jerky movements, so the visual is completely steady and silky smooth. You can see this in a ton of movies nowadays, most movies nowadays, but it was really perfected with The Shining and those tricycle scenes going in and out of the hallways at the Overlook Hotel. With that being said, I feel like Flanagan continues the greatness of camera work here in Dr. Sleep. He has this unique, different style and mixture of magical, dreamlike cinematography. The CGI is used to perfection here as well, and I really feel like, based on the cinematography and the camera movements and the CGI, Flanagan creates a whole new, different world. The overall tone of this movie is unique. The Shining book is horror. We already know that. Stanley Kubrick's version is horror, but a completely different type of horror that we had never seen before back in 1980. It was just so different and unique. And that was really one of King's gripes about the movie, is that Kubrick supposedly didn't do enough research in terms of what a horror movie is. We all know that Kubrick never had any intentions of staying within any boundaries or any lines whatsoever, and because of that, that is why he is who he is, and that's why it is that we have such a brilliant film in The Shining. But the tone in this film is completely different. It is not really horror. It has this weird dreamlike quality to it because of the Shining gift and the new mythologies that the True Knot bring into the fray. And the gorgeous cinematography is enhanced even more so after the colorist is done with it and slaps that nice blue hazy shade into it. It just adds an extra layer of that weird, dreamy darkness to it. It's honestly not a horror film that has jump scares and really does scares at all. It has a couple scenes that do have that, but for the most part, it is atmospheric, it is creepy, and it is dreamlike. This is where Flanagan has really created his own feel for his own tones for this, his own film. It doesn't matter if it's an adaptation, it doesn't matter if it's a sequel. This is his vision, and he is really putting his directorial trademark to this film. It's got texture. This is a film I highly, highly, highly recommend seeing in the theaters. If you're a horror fan, be a part of the Shining legacy. Go see it in the theater. I mean, can you imagine if you were around in 1980 and you had the opportunity to go see Stanley Kubrick's The Shining in the theaters and you said, nah, I'll wait for it to come out on VHS tape in a couple years. It's fine. Can you imagine missing out on that opportunity? Go see this film. Am I saying it's the greatest film of all time? Absolutely not. Am I saying it's a film that you need to see because it is an important part of the horror culture that we so love? Yes, I am. I think a lot of people will love this movie. I think a lot of people will hate this movie. I think a lot of people will find this movie boring and slow. I think there's a lot of people who won't like the introduction of the new characters and storylines. I totally get that. But understand, The marketing of Dr. Sleep even says on the posters that this is the next chapter in the Shining story. It's not a direct sequel, it is the next chapter in the Shining universe. I don't think The Shining needed a sequel, not in book form or movie form, but we have it, and we should be really, really thankful that Mike Flanagan was the director and gave us so much of what we wanted, because trust me, it wasn't all there in the book. Okay, here are the spoilers now for both the book and the film, so you have been warned. Please forgive me if I'm all over the map on this one. My head is racing in 1,000 different directions because of this film. Again, most of my issues are more with the book than with the film, so I'm going to go over both of them here. I don't overly feel like the ghost of the Overlook Hotel and the gift/curse of The Shining gels well with the new mythology that is the True Knot. The True Knot is more of like these vampire gypsies, whether it's a Twilight type or the Near Dark type. But the filmmakers do an excellent job to bring all of this together in the film. As I said before, I had a bit of a problem with Rose the Hat in the book because I didn't think she was strong enough. I felt like Abra and Danny were constantly kicking the living shit out of her throughout the entire book, and if you don't fear the villain, the movie's gonna be really, really bad, and I had that problem with the book. But the filmmakers did a great job of really making Rose stronger, smarter, and had a lot more going on for her. And even made the other members of the True Knot that much scarier. They were silly to me in the book, and just old and pirate names, and they were just decrepit. But in the movie, Crow Daddy ends up killing Abra's dad, which was not in the book. Snakebite Andy forcing Danny Torrance's friend to kill himself. That was not in the book. I thought that was another nice touch where they were really able to make things a little bit more scary and a little bit more that feeling of we might have an issue here for the protagonists. Those two actors that played Andy and Crow Daddy, I think they did a great job as well, and they should be in the discussion. They should not be forgotten. Flanagan didn't capture the measles in the film. In the book, the baseball boy actually ends up giving measles to the True Knot, and Grandpa Flick ends up dying because of those measles. It works in the book because then it forces Rose the Hat to really get things moving and really go on the attack on Abra, but you didn't really need that in the film, and I think Flanagan realized what he has created meant he didn't need that. The motivations to get Abra were already there, and he just removed it as a whole. Great job. It would have had that weird War of the Worlds feeling where it was like, and then the aliens caught a cold and the human race lived long and prospered. Just such a letdown. And I love how Flanagan killed off Grandpa Flick with the CGI during the cycling that happens where the body kind of goes in and out, goes skeletal, back to flesh, skeletal, back to flesh. The CGI was fantastic there. Another thing that was fantastic was the baseball boy scene and that death. That was one of the moments where I thought you could have easily started the film around that incident, because after that, all the character arcs were really running. All the plot was really running. The motivations were there, everything was moving, and it was moving at top notch. But, like I said, I still needed that first act because I wanted to go back to The Shining. I wanted to see what happened to Danny and Wendy after the Overlook. It was interesting though because of all the dreamlike scenarios within the cinematography. I felt that was really taken back in this scene, and this scene was very stark and very raw and very real and bloody. They really went for it with the screaming and the crying, and it was a tough scene, and I really, really appreciated that scene. A couple other things they left out of the movie from the book, which I thought was really, really good. They left Abra's grandmother out. That was a big slowdown in the book for me, and it actually gets revealed that Danny Torrance is actually Uncle Dan to Abra, and I thought that was really kind of silly in the book. It didn't really work for me. I didn't want to know that Jack Torrance was having an affair. I didn't need that. I didn't want that. I just didn't. Flanagan did a great job of really showing Danny Torrance as a drunkard, having that one-night stand with Deanie, waking up the next morning, seeing the baby. One of my favorite parts of the book is the relationship Danny Torrance has with Deanie and the little baby. Now, it's not a long relationship. It is just the one-night stand and that day after, but I gotta say, it was one of the most heart-wrenching sequences in the book, and I really felt like it was Stephen King's best writing in the entire book. It just goes a lot further and a lot deeper and a lot darker than it does in the film, but I don't think Flanagan needed all of that, and I think he did a great job and stopped where he could stop and where he needed to stop to get to all the other stuff. But it was really a lot more heart-wrenching in the book than in the movie. How do we feel about Rose the Hat doing this insane Superman impersonation, like flying through the clouds and looking for Abra in this weird dreamlike shining moment? I mean, for me, I thought it was really powerful. This really showcased the cinematography, the special effects, and the camera work. I mean, I thought it was just this crazy, weird, magical, fun, dynamic scene, and I loved it. Again, it's just another way that the director showed he was putting his directorial stamp on this adaptation. I mean, that sequence, the way they did it could have ended up so disastrous, or they just shot it for days and days and days, and finally they were like, we gotta scrap it. It doesn't work. It's just terrible. It could have ended up like one of those weird CGI werewolf transformations like in Bad Moon, where you're just like, oh, we have to have it in the film because we need that part in the film. There's too much plot there, but oh, it's just so bad. But it was perfect. Flanagan shows The Shining completely different from the way King shows it in his book and completely different from the way Kubrick shows it in his film. I just love that he has his own vision to this movie. You got King, you got Kubrick, you have a fan base, you have a studio, and you've got Mike Flanagan saying, I'm gonna do it my way. I'm gonna show you how I want this to be done. I'm gonna have a unique vision, and if you don't like it, I don't care, because this is how it's gonna be done. I love that confidence. Let's talk about the Overlook Hotel. Dr. Sleep the book is about Abra and Rose the Hat, and Danny Torrance is more of just a sidekick mentor. He's very much the Rocky Balboa to Creed in these Creed movies. The filmmakers do an excellent job of putting more Danny Torrance in the movie because, let's be honest, if it's a Shining sequel type movie, that's what we want to see. We want to know what happens with Danny. We want to know how it ends for Danny. And he does a great job of bringing the Overlook Hotel back, because in the book of The Shining, remember, the Overlook's gone. It exploded due to the boiler. Sorry. So in the book of Dr. Sleep, you have these gypsies, the True Knot, hanging out at the campgrounds that are on the ruins of the Overlook Hotel, basically. And it still has a sort of presence, but there's no hotel. It's gone. King was not going to change that for Kubrick or anyone. But Flanagan brings us back. He knows what he wants to see. He knows what he wants to show. He wants to be in the Overlook. And the way he uses the Overlook Hotel to go against the True Knot and Rose, I thought was absolutely brilliant. Look at it logically. Abra is young and her powers are strong, but she doesn't necessarily know how to use them the way she might need to. Danny Torrance is old, and because he's older, he's not able to use The Shining as well as he could when he's a kid. Thus, they need help in order to get Rose the Hat the frig out of there. So what do? They go to the only other powerful source that they know of, the Overlook Hotel, and all its ghosts. And they especially need more power because Rose the Hat just took all that steam and she is going really gung-ho now. And I just love how Act 3 really revs up. You have Danny going in there by himself. He's alone with this hotel all shut down. He goes to the boiler that has so much to do with the Shining universe, whether Kubrick wants it to or not. He goes down there. He turns everything on. The lights slowly come up. He walks around the hotel. You really feel it. You get the goosebumps. You know what this is? This is Freddy vs. Jason. Have you all seen Freddy vs. Jason? Because say it's a 90-minute film or whatever, 75 minutes was just humans running around being stupid, and you waited the entire movie for finally Freddy and Jason to face off. And when they finally face off, you're like, okay, someone grab me my popcorn, let's go, let's do this. And that's what I felt here when we finally got to the Overlook Hotel. I was like, give me my popcorn, give me my icy. I cannot wait to see this part of the film. I was all in and ready to go. King, in the book, deliberately stays away from any vision of Kubrick, And all the things that we want to see, he purposely doesn't put them in there because it's affiliated with Kubrick. So he does go back to the ruins of the Overlook, and we're kind of like hanging out in an Overlook shed, but he doesn't go back. He doesn't take us back the way we need to go back. Flanagan does that for us. The final third of the film, though, it gives me so many thoughts and feelings and emotions, and at one point I'm like, this is amazing. The next point I'm like, oh, that makes me sad. The next point I'm like, why? The next part I'm like, this is amazing again. There's just so much to it and so many emotions. It's hard to break down Act 3 completely because, I mean, I was just all over the place mentally. Remember the Ready Player One homage to The Shining in the middle of that film? It was just such a beautiful sequence, and it just really gave me all the feelings and emotions that I wanted from The Shining. It was just such a great tip of the hat. And Flanagan tried to do that for Act 3, but he tried to do it times infinity. He had so much more to do for us, and he tried to do so much for us. I love that Jack Torrance was there at the bar. I love that Jack Torrance and Danny Torrance got to have a conversation. However, you cannot have the little kid from E.T. be Jack Torrance. I cannot tell you how badly it took me out of the film to be watching Henry Thomas's face as Jack Torrance. That was despicable. I hated that recreation more than anything in the entire world. Okay, that's not true. That's a little embellished. But I did want to repeatedly punch myself in the face so I didn't have to see Henry Thomas being Jack Torrance. It just didn't work for me. God, just show me the alcohol. Just show me the cup. Just show me him pouring the Jack Daniels. Even tease it. Get Jack Nicholson's voice in there. I mean, can you imagine the chills you would have got if you could have actually heard Jack Nicholson's voice? Ooh, pay that man the money to just do a little voice work. That would have been gold. But instead, it was just like a bad recreation in like a bad, I don't know, it was bad. What made it even worse is it was one of the most pivotal scenes in the film, and I just felt like he missed it. But can you imagine hearing Jack's voice? Seriously, imagine hearing Jack's voice, and then imagine Rose the Hat going up the steps after Danny Torrance, and the way that she moves, and the way that she does her little Jack impersonation, and the way that she has Jack in her soul, the way that she talks to Danny, in her movements, in her dialect. I mean, it was perfection. I loved how that battle on the steps in the Overlook Hotel went down, and I love how Rose the Hat got killed. I absolutely love that. And in terms of the recreations, I was totally on board. I love how they did the Grady twins, Grady himself, Wendy, the lady in the bathtub was fantastic. Even Dick Halloran was great. I really loved all those recreations and some of the smaller roles in it too. But you cannot recreate Jack Torrance. He is an absolutely iconic figure. Jack Torrance is just too iconic a face, a figure, a character. He is everything to The Shining. And for you to put Henry Thomas's face there, I'm not on board with that. Hell no, I'm not on board with that. I wonder how much it would have cost to get Jack Nicholson to do the voice though. That'd have been sick. Man, it really took me out of the film. It just took me out of that moment, and that was the moment I really needed to be in. All right, I could continue to compare the book, and I can nitpick every little thing between the book and film, but I'm just not gonna do that. I could dive deeper into the Overlook sequence. I could talk about Danny Torrance's experience in the hospice with the cat and seeing people through and why his name's Dr. Sleep. I could talk about the differences in the mist, the red mist versus the white mist, but in the end, if you haven't read the book, read the book. If you haven't seen the movie, see the movie. If you've seen the movie, see the movie again. Do it. Look for all the Easter eggs. There are so many Easter eggs. One of my favorite Easter eggs is them having a scene in an exact replica of Ullman's office. I thought that was fantastic. That was just good fun. All in all, it's a great film. If you haven't seen it, go see it. I don't think it's a sequel we needed, but it's the sequel we got, and I think we should embrace it. Is it one of the greatest movies of all time? God, no. But Mike Flanagan deserves so much credit for being able to gel together multiple books, multiple movies, and multiple visions, put it all together, and then create his own vision that was really, really stunning. And for all of you who are still here watching, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I tend to ramble a little bit when it comes to the Shining universe, so I appreciate you still being here. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.